I don't consider myself the best axeman ever or anything else. I just consider myself one of the fortunate ones that I've been able to do a sport I love to a high level.
Basically, I treat this, we're all different, we're all competitors. You know, everyone that competes in the Stihl Timber Sport Series and around the world chopping is different. And this is how I approach cutting a standing block.
I'm at a block drawer and see the blocks being drawn. Well, the only one that I've really drawn is the one that's got my name on it or my number. And the biggest challenge with it is how I'm going to chop that block versus one that's been similar to it or one that's I've chopped like that one in the past. If the log has a hard side on it, some people quarter that log, some people put it at the back, some people put it at the front. I think just determining on how that wood is cutting determines on whether I put it in the corner or whether I put it on the front or the back. I put it on the stand, mark it up the way it needs to be marked up to prior to where I'm going to put my feet. How the log is marked out, it determines where you put your feet.
So I go to the front of the log for starters. I draw a line across the top and straight up the middle of where I'm going to go. Then I take a dressmaking tape measure and quarter the log. So that's 38 inches round roughly. So what's half of 38? 19, that's right. Half of 19. So by those lines there, you can position your feet on the ground to cut that log square from both sides. And then basically at arm's length, should be about where your first hit up should be. So you see people that mark off the dummy and all that. The dummy can be any height off the ground. So that's where my first two blows are going to go. And that's roughly a 12-inch block. So I'll open up 12 inches of wood.
I mark out the maximum scarf. And if the wood is really tough or exceptionally carroty, well, I don't need the full complement of wood. Well, I can take a little bit shorter wood. I think most of the competitors do that too, just watching them.
The top of that block's pretty level, so I'll measure down off the top is 7 inches. So when you're driving down with your last blows in the back to meet your blows in the front, you want about a 2-inch gap. So I'll come down 5 inches from the back and back down to the 12 inches. In your years of wood chopping and your experience will change with the type of wood you chop. If you cut real hard, stringy wood that's really hard to chip, you'll narrow that chip down. If you cut real free wood, well, you can open your chip up and cut with immense slope, much like Jason Wynyard does. Now those lines that I got on there now is all you ever need. And when you stand at a block, you're going to stand over here to start it, because that's your front. So this line that's across the top here, if you imagine that coming straight down onto the ground, straight out here, your front leg shouldn't be riding out in front of that. That line that goes down there is your front leg, and that's where your swing ends. Where your front leg is, that's where your hip comes around square. And that's about where you gain where to stand to chop that block. When you turn into the back, and with how you've chopped the front, and you put your feet in the same place, you'll be able to chop the back accordingly to the front of the block. And that should topple off real nicely. Imagining that line comes straight down here again, your front foot always staying on that side of the line. And this one coming around until, I think a good training ploy when you're practicing at home would be that wherever you train, like mark where this back foot's going to go. And mark where your front foot's going to go. So every time you go to chop, keeping that leg across there is so important, because most people get cut in wood chopping in a standing block. When you hit the top of it, you take your first 4 hits out, you come in with your next ones and you catch the side of the blade on that scarf, and it comes down off the top, and if your leg is there, it'll go into it every time. If your leg is there, it won't go down into it. It'll go down into the ground. You line yourself up with your feet, you get close enough to the block so you can hit out there comfortably, and you can still hit in here comfortably without even moving your feet. For starters, you bring the axe in there on about a 45 degrees angle of cut on the wood, and a nice easy swing over the top without forcing it, lining your head up from back here, and when it's back here, lining it up to where it hits the wood is probably one of the best things you can do for training and getting good at it. I never recommend going fast in training. I always reckon like 75% is ample.
I put my log on the stand and I dog it up and I'm ready to go. I line myself up on my feet. I see what the surroundings are around. And then I basically just go through the basics of wood chopping, the swing, how it needs to be, keeping my feet on the ground. I try and hit on go. The first hit's on the bottom on the far side, and I try and get it in as hard as I can, and the next hit follows on the same plane towards me, and that determines just about how many hits I'm going to put in the front, those two.
So I'm put my first 4 hits in, and I've spanned them out as well as I can. I've made them as neat as I can, and they're heading in the right direction. So immediately I've opened that block up, and I've decided I'm going to go like 10 in the front. And that's basically how you should approach every block you chop. From when you put the first hits in the block, of how far they go in, to how many hits you're going to put in it. And throughout the whole block you should be thinking all the time.
The only thoughts that you should probably have in while you're chopping is chopping wood. If anyone wasn't thinking that, they're unsafe.
There's another 4, and I've got to where I could put my driving blows up.
When you're going from round to round, you want to bore it in just a little bit, right?
You see the shape of that X?
Yeah, it has to, right?
That's a wedge. If you just kept trying to go in the exact angle, that axe would skew off every time. So you put that first hit in there, the next one goes on about that angle. You never want to close this to a V if you want to get any penetration on your uploads.
I know, like in the underhand when you're doing it, you just line your body up. Is there any sort of trick that you could say for the standing?
Everything's related to your arms, hand-eye coordination. Just lining up your arms and how it hits the wood. And I'd recommend hitting 3 up in a foot block. That there is called a corner. This here is called a corner, and so is this here. Some people will hit the near corner, some people will hit the far corner. I'd say in like good wood, if it was travelling easy, probably hitting the near wood would be the thing I would do. In harder wood, I would probably hit the heel of the axe out there first, because that's the easiest part of an axe to get to cut, the heel of the axe. If you put 3 up, you cover your corners because the shape of the axe is round, and when you're spanning the axe across the wood, you create a hit here and a hit here where you've got a corner in the middle, which you've got there, and that's the hardest thing to break off.
The first 4 hits I put on a block, I try and put them 100% power to whatever the block lets me travel at a speed, and then I put my 6 blows in the front.
And I've skewed that one a little bit, so I went back and fixed it, and I've hit that one up in there. And that happens. It happens to everyone. So when you're training and you're wanting to get good, if you just blunder on around and fog your eyes up and get on around and not fix it, well, you've learned nothing, have you? You've just taught yourself to just blunder on. So when you go out to competition, you'll just blunder on.
I put my 6 blows in the front, and I get around the other side, taking the least amount of steps as necessary.
So basically I'll try and put 6 blows in the back of this now and cut it and hit it and get it off. So I've lined my feet roughly up in the same position. I've been wood chopping since the age of 7. I mean, I've had an axe all my life and I've spent time with it. And that's the key and the success to anything. But not only spending time with it, is thinking about it and thinking about how you can improve. And it's like anything, the basic things you can do are the most important things. If you make the basic things of wood chopping repetitive and consistent, you'll be more consistent and better.
How is it that you don't stick on that first hit compared to other people? Just the way you manipulate the axe as soon as it gets into the wood?
The key is to anything is how the axe went into the wood is how it's got to come out of the wood. And that's the key. I mean, a lot of times when you stick that first hit, you move one part of your body, or you move something, and it won't come out as easy.
I know when I do a down hit, I try to keep my wrist back and just...
When you're hitting the block, the only movement you should get out of your wrists is that way. If you move your wrist this way at all, the blade of the axe is going to move. Because when you hold that axe out there, if you move your wrist that way, it's going to go straight. If you move your wrist that way, it's going to curve in the wood.
With me hitting the axe, I keep my wrist back. It helps me keep my arms out further. Is that...
Well, what'll end up happening, if you don't just let your wrist go, you'll just cut a lot of your near wood and then end up with a big wall of wood on your far side. So as the axe is hitting the wood, you've got to let your wrist go so the axe can cut square. Like it can carry on cutting. The nose of the axe is the hardest thing. What we call the nose of the axe is from the middle of the axe round that way, and that's the hardest thing to get to cut the wood. So if you hold your wrist down like that, this part of the axe is never going to get any opportunity to cut wood. But if you let that go out like that, you're letting that axe, because you want to get as much out of the axe as you can. You want to let every millimetre of that axe cut in the wood.
So even on nearwood hits too, even on the nearwood hits let it travel too?
Yep. It's the axe that does the cutting. The man just does the swinging and the accuracy. And the extra depth that it gets into the wood is the speed that person can generate.
I noticed how you placed your front foot there. You said the line so that it's the inside of your ankle and the outside of your knee. What about when you're walking the log? I mean, I know you're tall and you probably don't walk. I'm not sure if you do or not, but you know what I mean?
A 12-inch diameter block, you really don't need to walk the log. Bigger logs, you definitely walk the block a little bit. Because when you've got a big wide log, to get that next side, well, you do tend to move. The more weight that you got on the ground, and the more power you've got from the ground up, the more power you will deliver to the block. If your feet are moving around as you're hitting, the less power you will generate.
Because I find that when I turn and I drive my nearwood, I find that I'm kind of crowded a lot of times. I mean, I know that I'm standing fairly far back anyway, but I feel like I get more power into the hit if I just step a little bit that way. Am I losing anything by doing that, or
no?
Not really.
No, not really. If you can hit it, every time you move something, though, is when you'll be less accurate.
Yep.
Every time you move some part of your body, you're going from your toes to your ears. You've got a chance of being less accurate.
Yep.
And as you're hitting the wood, if you don't just stay still and let it happen, if you move one part of you, something's going to move. Like if I hold that axe there and don't move, it doesn't move. But if I move like this, or any way, that axe moves.
Yep.
See that? And like if I move my wrists, if I move my head like that, it moves. And that's one of the biggest things that you watch most people do when they chop, and move their head. So your head's connected to your shoulders, and your arms are connected to your shoulders, and the handle's connected to that. So when you move your head, the axe moves.
Yep.
Like that. When that axe is hitting the block, your head should be bolted there so it can't move. Self-criticism and self-discipline is the key to success, really. The person that can relate to themselves the most and do the most for themselves is the key.
That's the whole point of training. You train nothing else but basic skills, mind skills, hand-eye reaction skills. That's what training's all about.
You can make this a repetition thing. Wood chopping is all about repetition, about doing the same thing over and over and being consistent and lifting that consistency.
I'll learn something till the day I die. Yep. Whether it's in sport or just general life.
No other questions? Don't be shy. Speak now or forever hold your peace.